Hello, Malcolm here, and welcome to Quiet Time Coaching, episode 23. And today we're going to talk about how to be heard by God. How to be heard by God. What an important topic. It's very frustrating when you get ignored by someone in a shop, you're trying to get their attention to serve you, or someone online, or somebody at a call center, you're phoning up to try and sort out a problem and they don't seem to be answering your call, or they're not paying attention. It's very frustrating. When it's a stranger, it's an inconvenience. When it's one of your children, it's certainly an annoyance. When it's your spouse, it's an emergency. But what about when you feel like God is ignoring you or God isn't hearing you? What do we do then? Well, this morning, this all came to mind because I took my usual prayer walk through the park. I walked through Castlebury Park in Watford most mornings for a great prayer time. And on those prayer walks, I often see, in fact, I always see some dog walkers and their dogs. Dogs, small dogs, enormous dogs, relatively well-behaved dogs, certainly very disobedient dogs, some dogs that have to be kept on a lead, some dogs with a muzzle, all kinds of dogs. And I used to have a dog, so I'm sympathetic to the challenges of being a dog owner. But I must admit, sometimes the dogs don't pay much attention to their owners. I've never seen an owner not pay attention to their dog, at least not yet. But I often see dogs that have pay no attention to their owners. And this morning was no exception. I saw a person I'd not seen before who had two really quite large dogs, and they were yelling at the top of their voice to try and get their dog's attention. And I saw the two dogs halfway across the park having a whale of a time, bouncing around, jumping, barking, playing with, in fact, another dog. And the owner was the other side of the park yelling their head off, and they had a whistle as well, a really high-pitched whistle. They were blowing, their cheeks were puffed out, they were going red in the face, trying to get the attention of these two dogs who clearly had no intention of coming back to their owner anytime soon. We can all relate to this kind of frustration of not being heard when we want to be. So what do we do when it looks like God isn't listening? We can't answer every single issue to do with that today in this one episode, but we will take a look at one verse in Hebrews that has a lot to tell us and teach us about this challenge. Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 7. It reads like this: During the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverent submission. Really interesting little mini portrait of Jesus here. The book of Hebrews is fascinating, filling in some of the blanks of Jesus' life that the Gospels don't tell us. And here is one insight into his prayer life that we do get hinted at, particularly in Gethsemane, but a little bit more here. So a couple of things I'd like to draw out from this. And the first is this, that we look at this word here where it says prayers and petitions. So why was Jesus heard? Because he offered up prayers and petitions. Now the word petition there is the Greek word hikateria. That's it, hikateria, which is to do with holding out an olive branch. You hold out an olive branch to somebody as you approach them because you want to have peace with them. So you come with your olive branch. And that's what Jesus is doing here in his prayers. He's coming to God with an olive branch. In other words, he's coming in submission, as it mentions in this verse right here. He's coming because he wants peace with God the Father, and he knows that God the Father has the right terms of peace. So he comes in that attitude of submission, of you are the one who will set the terms of peace, not I. He's coming in humility. He's not coming with a demand, but a request. And there's a big difference there. Sometimes I believe we do not get our prayers heard by God because we come with a demand rather than a request. There's a big difference between those two things. In your prayers recently, when you feel you haven't been heard, have you been coming with a demand? Or have you been coming with a request in submission, in humility? This is Jesus not being passive, not standing afar from God, but coming to God with a submissive, humble olive branch attitude. That's the first thing we see in this passage. If we want our prayers to be heard by God, we must come to him on his terms. We can approach him with confidence, as it says earlier in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. We can come with confidence, knowing that our prayers will be heard, but confident because we're coming with the right attitude. That's the first thing. The second thing is this, that we see Jesus praying with wholeheartedness, don't we? Loud cries and tears, it says, fervent cries and tears, loud in another translation. He comes with a wholeheartedness in his prayers. There's an old rabbinic saying that says this, let me read this for us. There are three kinds of prayers, each loftier than the preceding. Prayer, crying, and tears. Prayer is made in silence, crying with raised voice, but tears overcome all things. It goes on to say, there is no door through which tears do not pass. Lovely old rabbinic saying about the difference between silent praying and then crying and then tears. Tears open all the doors. Now, I don't believe it's necessary to weep every time we pray just to get God's attention. He's not that deaf. I mean, he will hear any prayer uttered in weakness and a whisper. But there is something here we need to learn about wholeheartedness, I believe. Perhaps we need to ask ourselves, if we don't feel like we're being heard by God, whether we're praying as if we mean it. If someone was standing next to us listening to our prayer, would they think this really was important to us? It can be tempting just to offer words into the ether, into the air, just saying the right things, we think they're right, but without the heart being there. Why would God hear or answer prayers that aren't wholehearted, at least? However, that wholeheartedness is expressed. So the humility is necessary and the wholeheartedness is necessary if God is going to hear our prayers, pay attention to them. So in conclusion, we see that Jesus was not delivered from death, was he? It says that he hoped to be, he wanted to be, or at least he prayed to the one who could save him from death. He was heard, but his request was not granted. Or was it? See, in Gethsemane, we see that he prayed not that his will be done, but that the Father's will be done. He certainly would have preferred to stay alive. I think we can tell that from the way that he prayed. But he was willing for God to have the last say. He trusted that God's will was right, and that's the right attitude for us to approach God with. That's Matthew 26 and verse 36 and following. The evidence that Jesus was heard is that in Luke 22 verse 43 it says, an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. He was heard. He didn't get his prayer, his personal desire met that he would not go to his death, but he did find himself heard, and God rewarded that humility and submission and wholeheartedness by sending an angel to Jesus to strengthen him in his time of need. And I believe God will strengthen you, and he will give you what you need as you pray with humility, holding out that olive branch, and with submission to God's will, trusting him, and pray with wholeheartedness, as if it really matters to you. So what do you think about these thoughts from Hebrews chapter 5 verse 7, the example of Jesus we see here? Do you think of other things that help you to be confident that God hears you? What helps you to come to God with confidence that he does hear your prayers? I'd love to know what you think. Please leave a comment anywhere you hear or see this recording. Leave a comment so that we can all learn from one another, because we learn best when we learn in community. And please do me and others a favor by passing the link to this recording on to one other person, just one other person that you think could benefit from what we've talked about here today. So I hope this week, whenever you have a quiet time, whenever you have a prayer time, I pray that it's fulfilling and satisfying and intimate and draws you close to God and gives you a kind of strength that Jesus received from that angel when God sent the angel to strengthen him. I pray that's your experience this week. So until the next time, take care and God bless.